By the 12th century, it was very common to see Irishmen wearing yellow tunics with short trousers, as this style of fashion was very common of this time period. The woven belt would be worn indicating of a certain person's clan, of where he actually came from. It is highly believed that one would actually come from certain regions by the coloration of the said colors. This would show and indicate of a person from where he came from, such as from a man from Ulster or a man from Munster. The working knife was a very common household tool, as this would be used for everyday uses, such as shaving, and as well as sometimes even picking teeth, cutting meat, or as well used in everyday labor. The footwear the Irish wore depended on the variety of their wealth, and as well the region they lived in. As one who lived closer to the region of the Pale, it would be more commonly seen that Irishmen would be wearing footwear that was designed in England, while Irishmen that were further away from the Pale, such as that in Ulster, or as well even farther south, would end up wearing the design footwear of the Gaelic culture. However, it was very common to see the Irish Kern wearing no footwear on the battlefield at all, due to the terrain of the Irish countryside. The Irish Kern that was used as a skirmisher were known to wear tightly woven tunics, mainly made out of wool. This type of armor was mostly seen from the Iron Age culture and all the way into the 16th century. This, though, was mostly meant to stop arrows and as well javelins. But the well thrust of a sword, not so much. Long knives would be very commonly seen. Some historians are also stated that these might have even been short swords, depending on the person's wealth, as some of these blades were actually of a double-bladed design. The axes that were used varied from user to user, as each axe has its own different variation in lengths of the shaft, and as well the axe head itself, mostly being of a utility-style weapon. Two-handed axes were also used, as these axes were mostly utility axes meant to cut down trees and forests, but could also be used to cut down the limbs of an attacker. The war club was a very common weapon used by the Irish Kern, as this weapon was very highly used by the lower classes, mainly because of the lack of metal weaponry. The swords that the Irish Kerns were known to have used varied depending on the user. As one, it would indicate of how the person would end up acquiring the weapon, either passed down from father to son, or as well being that of a minor nobleman, or even being the bastard son of a nobleman. Whether or not if it would lead to which one, it did depend. However, most of the time, these weapons were passed down from father to son, or as well taken from the battlefield. However, most of these swords mirrored that of the late Viking Age style swords, so it wouldn't be too uncommon to see these, mostly with a Brazil nut pommel. Some, though, would also have a crossguard design, but these were extremely rare by this until the late 12th century. The shields that were used varied from the user, as it did depend on their own design and style of warfare, between the buckler and the strapped-on shield. However, the strapped-on shield had its own variation in design, such as from the Skaith and the Starga. Now, if none of you know the difference between the two, I wouldn't blame you, as these are very hard to understand of historical shields. Pretty much, these were of a form of two design shields. The Skaith being designed either in a form of oval or round shape with a concave wicker and leather type design. These were the cheaper quality design shields, mainly used by the lower class of Irish Kerns, while the Starga was actually a form of round shield, in which in the early years was made with a mixture of wood and as well rawhide. However, over the years, it was a mixture of rawhide and brass and nails. In fact, the Starga is also nicknamed the Irish Targe, and of which was used from the time of the mid-12th century up into the 16th century. The javelin and war darts. These are a very common used weapon by the Irish Kerns, as by this point in time, Irish Kerns were entirely different compared to the earlier centuries, as instead of being used as a levy form of foot soldiers, the majority of them were now starting to be used as a form of levy skirmish units. Javelins would be a very common weapon, however, the war dart would also be used, indicating of its own design. However, of what they look like is still left debated. The bow would be a very common weapon being used by the Irish Kerns. As one, when it comes to form of skirmish warfare, this type of weapon would be perfect for killing mounted English knights, or as well attacking the English in the middle of the morning. These type of kerns were also used as a form of light cavalry, which would ride around as well throwing javelins, and as well, some accounts, even jumping off their horse and releasing the bow and arrow upon their opponent. However, there's very much debate on how these warriors were used. The Irish heavy kern was a different type of subject in history. Instead of the tightly woven tunics, they wore gambeson, mostly of a sleeveless variety. This would actually add a form of extra protection, especially from said cutting weapons such as swords. However, the blunt instrument of a mace or even an axe could be still felt underneath. The arming cap and helmets would also be added in the form and the ranks of the units. These would be of a bowl helmets, mainly that of this certain everyday cheaper design. However, some could even afford a form of helmet that allowed an arch design, simply allowing a said weapon to glance off to the side. As these were a very easy to manufacture helmet, and which were perfect for a foot soldier to own. The long knife and short sword would also be used on this form of combat. These type of weapons would be perfect for everyday use of combat usage. Axes were another useful type of weapon that these warriors used, as these would have been perfect for everyday combat fighting as well as utility. So in other words, an everyday worker can easily pick up his axe and go to fighting. Two-handed axes, just as they were used for cutting down trees, could also cut down humans, and as well even that of horses, even mounted knights, as these were perfect weapons on a battlefield. The club would be another great weapon on the battlefield, as this type of weapon would be viewed as a lower class mace, but still, however, this weapon was anything but primitive. Due to the threat of the Norman cavalry being a major threat to the Irish foot soldiers and their ranks of troops, it was very common to see Irishmen actually starting to use two-handed spears, mainly called a pike, or short staff pikes, meaning they weren't exactly as long as what we would see from the Battle of Bannockburn, as these were meant for light form of warfare, and would be perfect for an Irishman to be used behind his shield formation, as it could be used with both one- and two-handed uses. An Irish kern that could afford it, or as well if it being passed down from its father to son, would be using a sword. Now, the sword, though, as well, it would also still carry the old design from that of the late Viking culture and into the early Crusader culture. However, most historians believe they started to copy mostly from either the Scots or, as well, from the Norman invaders soon by this point. The shields that were used were somewhere between 15 to 30 inches in diameter. However, it was more common to see a buckler-sized shield, or as well that of a targe-like shield, such as that as the starga. These, as I stated prior, were used highly by the Irish Kerns. It is unknown if the heavy Irish Kern did use bows, as it was stated that these men were used in the ranks and file units of the everyday Irish footmen, who in which were more likely a regular military units, unlike that of skirmish units, which were meant to attack the sides. So, if they used it or not, we have no idea. Seeing to the fact that these heavy Irish Kerns were stated to not even use javelins, which indicates of what these men were probably used for.
Lane, oh, Hamiskis milum him, Uaineranich, Hamiskis milum him, Uaineranich denan. Hamiskis milum him, Uaineranich, Hamiskis milum him, Uaineranich denan. Hamiskis milum him, Uaineranich, Hamiskis milum him, Uaineranich denan. Kulanto mein Brianto mein Kulanto mein Vojoch, Kulanto mein Brianto mein Hülalana Monar. Hamiskis milum him, Uaineranich, Hamiskis milum him, Uaineranich denan. Spoch nach romilatericht, Shinne wie ich jolver, Rachin lat gekul na krynje var, Trynje sjolag. Hamiskis milum him, Uaineranich, Hamiskis milum him, Uaineranich denan. Hamiskis milum him, Uaineranich, Hamiskis milum him, Uaineranich denan. Guidant, panim odrodant, agua swantam nechodian. Shoi gruisa guidant, panim odrodant, agua swantam nechodian. Goshki al chevret, aduy netedet, achim gochet amaura kofret, him gafel guaret. Gafel waret, rak frien meget. Klotjara gorglat, vermodisidarnat, op opperkløva, du is pelitrat pan, clywad ga Codban y gyrchyn gwyneu thawn Codban y gyrchyn gwyneu